What is up, you guys, and happy Sunday morning, or as always, whatever time of day or whatever day you happen to be watching this video. All I care is that you're here, and this is a space and time that we get to be together. So welcome to this week's Sunday school episode. So we are going to jump right in. We are going to continue our compassion series. Remember, right now we are learning about different examples of compassion throughout the Old Testament. So we are going to keep trucking on. We are going to keep going down that path of compassion together. We're still in the Old Testament. So today we're actually going to hear a really interesting story about this king named David and another person named Mephibosheth. Now, yes, that is a hard name to say. And am I going to say it perfectly every time I say it? Probably not. But that's the fun of the Old Testament. There's all kinds of names you get to learn. So today we are going to be talking about King David and Mephibosheth. But before we even begin to walk down that path together, if it is a Sunday morning and you're watching this, odds are you might be a little sleepy still. If you're watching this any other day or any other time of day, odds are you've maybe been sitting a little too long. So I invite you to stand up with me. Let's go ahead and stand up. Let's get on our feet, okay? Now, the first thing I want us to do is maybe you had a great night's sleep last night. Maybe you didn't have a great night's sleep last night. Maybe this week's been kind of tough. You're like sad the weekend's about to be over. Any of those frustrating feelings you're feeling, let's let them go for right now. And I think the best way to let them go is to wiggle them out. So I invite you to wiggle with me, wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Let's just get all that negative energy and negativity out of our bodies so we can have a sweet, fun time together. So just wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Give me your very best wiggles. Let's just get all of that out of our bodies. And then once you feel like you've kind of wiggled that negativity out of your head, I want you to take your arms and I want you to reach super, super tall up to the ceiling. Stretch, 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 stretch. Oh, if only your hands could touch the ceiling. That's how hard I want you to stretch. Good, good stretchies. And then I want you to go the opposite way and I want you to try to touch your toes. Go all the way down to your toes. Hey, and try to touch those toes for me. And I want you to slowly come back and round your shoulders back. Oh, I don't know about y'all, but that felt good. And then I want us to take 3 big, calming, centering, deep breaths together. Remember, you are breathing in the flowers and you are blowing out the candles. So let's take 3 really solid, deep breaths together. Ready? Awesome job, you guys. So I hope you're maybe feeling a little more ready to listen and learn. Now, normally this is the part where I ask you to sit down and calm your bodies, but not for today's activity. Your little bodies are just getting started. So I was wondering how many of you enjoy doing jumping jacks? Now, do I personally love doing jumping jacks? No, they make me tired and they're hard to do after a while. But today we are going to be doing some jumping jacks together. So I want us to start off with all of us together doing 10 really solid jumping jacks. We're going to do them together. 10 jumping jacks on the count of 3. So 1, 2, 3. Let's do 10 jumping jacks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Awesome job, you guys. Whew, getting a little sweaty over here. 10 really solid jumping jacks. You guys did awesome. So now the next challenge I have for you is I am wondering how many of you think you could maybe do 30 jumping jacks in only 10 seconds. Now, if you guys were here and we were in person together, I would offer some like really cool prize, maybe some good candy, some little thingamabobs to fidget with. I don't know. I would offer you a cool prize for maybe being able to do 30 jumping jacks in 10 seconds. But since we aren't physically together and I can't physically hand you anything, we are going to say that if you can complete 30 jumping jacks in only 10 seconds, you are going to deserve the best pat on the back possible. So I am not going to do these jumping jacks with you because I am going to count with you. So I am going to count to 10. And in that time frame, I want you to see if you can do 30 jumping jacks. So I'm talking your fast, best jumping jacks. I need 30 of them in only 10 seconds. Do you guys think you can do it? I don't know. There's only one way to find out. So I'm going to count to 10. You guys are going to try to do 30 jumping jacks, and we're just going to see what happens. So on your mark, get set, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, take a break, catch your breath. Now I am wondering how many of you were able to do 30 jumping jacks in only 10 seconds. Now that is quite a challenge. I gave you 30 jumping jacks in 10 seconds. That's a lot of fast jumping jacks. So if you were able to do 30 jumping jacks in 10 seconds, number one, I want to know how you get whatever energy you have. And number two, awesome job. Go ahead and give yourself that very, very deserved pat on the back because you deserve it. Now, if you were not able to do 30 jumping jacks in those 10 seconds, but you gave it your all, I still would love it if you pat yourself on the back. Now, you might be wondering, well, how come you got to pat yourself on the back if you didn't complete 30 jumping jacks in 10 seconds? Well, that, my friends, is the real heart of our lesson today. Today, we are going to be talking about what grace and kindness look like. So God wants all of his children to have good things and feel good things. So that is why, even if you didn't complete 30 jumping jacks in 10 seconds, I still want you to give yourself a really good pat on the back because God still wants you to have good things. And that is an example of grace. So that is what we are going to keep talking about today. And we are going to really see some pretty solid examples of grace and kindness in this story with David and I always struggle with saying this name, you guys, so stick with me, but the name is Mephibosheth. So we are going to talk about David and Mephibosheth. I'm going to keep struggling with the name. Old Testament names are hard, and I'm not going to pretend to be an expert. So we are going to read this story together and see where we can maybe think of some examples of kindness and grace in this story. So the story for today comes from 2 Samuel 9, verses 1 through 13. 2 Samuel 9, verses 1 through 13. Let's read through it together. All right. David, the king, wondered aloud, "Is there anyone from Saul's family still around? In memory of my friend Jonathan, I'd like to show kindness to him." A servant named Ziba came to David to answer. "A son of Jonathan lives at Lodabar. Both of his feet are crippled." So David sent for his friend's son, whose name was Mephibosheth. And with Mephibosheth came, he bowed before David. David called Mephibosheth by name, and Mephibosheth answered, "I am your servant." But David said to him, "Don't be afraid. I was a friend of your father's, and I really want to honor him. Let me give you back all the land that was your grandfather Saul's, and I want to invite you to eat with me at my table for all of your meals." Mephibosheth said, "Who am I? I am like a dead dog. Why are you showing me this kindness?" But King David insisted. He called back Ziba, who had been a servant of Saul's, and told him the new plan. And this was the new plan. "Everything that was Saul's, I give to his grandson, Mephibosheth. You and your family and your servants will till the land for him and bring him the produce, and he will always eat at my table." Ziba said he would do all that David commanded, and Mephibosheth ate at David's table like royalty. So guys, I'm going to read through this story one more time, and I want you to put on your very best listening ears so we can try to figure out what's going on in this story together. Okay, so remember, 2 Samuel 9, verses 1 through 13. Maybe if you close your eyes, that can help you concentrate on the story better. So I just want you to listen to this story really closely one more time, and then we're going to talk about it. David, the king, wondered aloud, "Is there anyone from Saul's family still around? In memory of my friend Jonathan, I'd like to show kindness to him." A servant named Ziba came to David to answer, "A son of Jonathan lives at Lodabar, and both of his feet are crippled." David sent for his friend's son, whose name was Mephibosheth, and Mephibosheth came. He bowed before David. King David called Mephibosheth by name, and Mephibosheth answered, "I am your servant." But David said to him, "Don't be afraid. I was a friend of your father's, and I want to honor him. Let me give you back all the land that was your grandfather Saul's. And you, I want to invite you to eat with me at my table for all of your meals." Mephibosheth said, "Who am I? I am like a dead dog. Why this kindness to me?" But King David insisted. He called back Ziba, who had been a servant of Saul's, and told him the new plan. Everything that was Saul's is now given to his grandson, Mephibosheth. You and your family and your servants will go and till the land for him and bring in the produce, but he will always eat at my table. Ziba said he would do all that David commanded, and Mephibosheth ate at David's table like royalty. So guys, I'm wondering if there's any part of this story that is really sticking out to you. Maybe you're wondering more about who King David was, how were him and Jonathan friends? Maybe you're wondering what made King David suddenly really want to find a family member of Jonathan's. Maybe you're wondering how Mephibosheth must have felt, because he literally looks at King David and says, "I'm the equivalent of a dead dog. Why are you being this kind to me?" I think it's important to note that King David invited Mephibosheth to eat with him at his table, which was the table made for a king. And King David said, "I want Mephibosheth to feel like royalty for every meal that he eats." So I'm wondering which part of this story really, really sticks out to you the most. And maybe it's multiple parts. Maybe it's all of the things I just said. I think all the things I just said are pretty important parts of the story. So to make sure that we're really grasping the plot, at least the basic plot of what happens in this story, we are going to use our story cards again this week. So these were sent out in a printable format in the email this morning. If you're able and you have a printer at home, I invite you to print these out, color them, put them together on your own if you want, as like a little refresher for the story. If you don't have a printer at home, we're gonna put these together right now, so you're still good, no worries. So remember, these story cards are out of order, and it is our job to put them in order to make sure we really understand the story, we really understand what happened here. So this first story card I have says, David gifts Mephibosheth with land and food and a promise to always be taken care of. Well, that sounds like, David gifts Mephibosheth with land and food and a promise to always be taken care of. That doesn't quite sound like the end, but it sounds like we're getting close to the end by the time this happens, right? By the time King David tells Mephibosheth, everything that belonged to Saul is now yours. So let's put that not quite at the end, but towards the end, maybe. We'll see if it stays. That's the cool thing about this. We can move them around if we need to, because I might not get it right the first time. I don't know. Okay, so the next story card we have says, Ziba tells David, you can honor Jonathan by showing kindness to his son, Mephibosheth. Well, this isn't what happens first, right? Because King David has to realize that he wants to honor Jonathan first. And this was how he could honor Jonathan. So Ziba tells David, you can honor Jonathan by showing kindness to his son, Mephibosheth. So that might be, what do you guys think? I think this might be what happens second. I think this might be our second story card. So we'll stick it right there. Okay, we have 2 story cards left. So this one says, Mephibosheth accepts this kindness offered to him even if he doesn't fully understand it. That sounds like a pretty solid ending to a story, right? So I think this might be our last story card, or at least the one that goes last. So that means we are just missing our first story card that should go here. And look at that, I only have 1 story card left. And this one says, David remembers his friend Jonathan and he wants to honor him. That's how the story starts, right? So yeah, that makes sense. That would be the first story card. So now let's read through these together and see if it makes sense. Okay, so it says, David remembers his friend Jonathan and wants to honor him. Ziba tells David, you can honor Jonathan by showing kindness to his son, Mephibosheth. David gifts Mephibosheth with land and food and a promise to always be taken care of. Mephibosheth accepts the kindness offered to him even though he doesn't fully understand it. Great job, you guys. That sounds like a pretty solid story plot. I think we got it in the right order. So let's read through it one more time to make sure you guys really understand what happens in this story. Okay. David remembers, remember this is King David. King David remembers his friend Jonathan and he wants to honor him. So Ziba tells David, you can honor Jonathan. Remember, Ziba was King David's servant. Ziba tells David, you can honor Jonathan by showing kindness to Jonathan's son, Mephibosheth. Now David gifts Mephibosheth with land and food and a promise that he will always be taken care of. Mephibosheth eventually accepts the kindness offered to him, even though he doesn't fully understand it. So by now, I hope you guys are understanding what exactly happens in this story. So now we have a chance to kind of talk about it together a little bit. So as we imagine together today, as we really talk about this story and how this story helps teach us grace, I'm wondering if grace means to give something. So grace means to give something like our love, our care, our generosity. So if grace means to give something like love, care, or generosity to someone who doesn't deserve it necessarily, where are some places that we see grace in the story about David and Mephibosheth? Well, I think there are plenty of examples of grace in this story between David and Mephibosheth, right? So I mean, King David wants to honor his friend Jonathan. So, of course, just King David wanting to honor a friend that he's remembering, that's already him showing kind of a spirit of grace. He wants to honor somebody in the memory of his friend. That's already him kind of exploring some grace. King David sending his servant to go find Mephibosheth, who was a descendant of Jonathan's. That's showing a lot of grace. For King David to tell Mephibosheth, you can have everything that once belonged to Saul, your grandfather. That's a really big, graceful gesture. And then remember what I talked about for King David to invite Mephibosheth to eat at his table for every meal for the rest of his life. That's a really, really big honor and not something that happened to people very often. So that was a huge gesture of grace. So yeah, this story shows us plenty of examples of grace. So while we're talking about that, let's look at our next question. So Mephibosheth doesn't feel like he deserves this kind of compassion from David. Remember, he compares himself to like a down dog. So I wonder if you have ever felt this way when someone showed grace to you, and what do you remember about that? So I want you to think really hard in your heads. Now that we're talking about what grace is, it's when somebody shows you love, kindness, or generosity when you maybe haven't necessarily done anything to deserve it. So I want you guys to think of a time when somebody showed you grace, when somebody did something really nice or kind for you just because they wanted to, just because they wanted to love you well. I can think, and guys, examples of grace can be so little, and they can also be really, really big gestures. Grace can come in all shapes and sizes and forms. So I know, let's see, a recent example of grace in my life, and again, this is something very little, but it meant a lot to me. I cooked dinner the other night, and I left the dishes, and I was really dreading having to come home the next day and do those dishes because I dirtied a lot of dishes to make this meal. And I'd had a long day at work, and the last thing I wanted to go home and do was a sink full of dishes. And then I came home, and my roommate and friend had done the dishes. And so I got to come home and just kind of relax. Now, she did not have to do those dishes for me. I dirtied those dishes. I fully intended on doing them. I hadn't asked her to do them for me, and I hadn't done anything extraordinarily nice for her that day for her to want to do something for me in return. She literally just did them because she knew I had been at work for a long time, and she knew I was probably going to come home tired. She just wanted to show an example of kindness and love to me because she's my friend and she cares about me. So that right there was an example of my roommate showing me some grace. Like I said, it was something very little. She just did the dishes for me. But it meant so much. I got to come home and I got to sit down. I didn't have to worry about doing the dishes, and that felt awesome. So like I said, grace comes in all shapes and sizes. So yes, that is something very little my roommate did for me, but it meant a lot. I can think of examples of really big gestures of kindness that people have done for me that have meant a lot. Like I said, grace is something that's hard to measure. It comes in all shapes and sizes and is something that we can exercise regularly in all different areas of our lives. So with that in mind, the next question is, sometimes we show compassion and grace to someone out of love that we have for someone else, like how David decided to honor Mephibosheth because he loved Jonathan so much. So I want you to think about someone in your life that you really, really, really love. Maybe a parent or a family member, maybe a really good friend, or just someone else in your life, someone that you love a whole lot. Who could you give to generously in honor of that person that you love? Ooh, that's a good question. That's a deep question. Who could you give to in honor of that person that you love? Well, I think in order to answer that question, you have to think about the person you love and the things that they are very passionate about and the things that are important to them. So, for example, my sister has a lot of nonprofits, a lot of charities that she loves and adores. And sometimes for certain gifts, or just when I know that she's feeling down, sometimes and this is something I can do as an adult. I know that you guys are little kids and you don't have a ton of money sitting around. I don't have a ton of money sitting around either, but you know what I mean. So sometimes when she's feeling kind of down, I will give to one of the charities that I know she loves, and I'll let her know, like, hey, I made this gift in honor of you. I just wanted you to feel a little loved and supported today. So that's an example of a way that you could do that. Maybe one of your close friends has a pet that they love a whole lot. Maybe they have a pet cat or a pet dog that just makes their day, you know how much they love that animal. Maybe you could get that animal a present, like a little cat toy or some dog treats, because that would be showing your friend kindness because you are giving something they love a lot. An example of grace, and that in turn is going to make your friend feel really good too. So sometimes we can also show grace to things that people we care about. I hope you guys are seeing when grace is an ongoing cycle here. We're just now cracking it open. So, and then the last question I want you guys to think about is, who is someone in your life that is maybe in need of some grace or some attention? So maybe let's see, what's a good example? Maybe your sibling. Maybe you guys haven't been getting along great lately. That's normal. That's just a part of having a sibling. Like I said, I have a sister. I get it. Growing up with siblings isn't always easy. Maybe your sibling and you have just been having a tough time. We're all stuck inside a lot more than we're used to. Maybe it's just been a little hard spending so much extra time with them. But you know what a great example of grace would be? Would be going and doing something nice for your sibling. Even though they haven't maybe done anything outwardly to super deserve it, still going and doing something nice for that sibling just because they're your sibling and because you love them. Guys, that is the perfect example of grace. Or maybe your parent or your family member, your caregiver, whoever that is, maybe you can tell they are really stressed lately, or they are having a tough week at work. Maybe you can tell that your parents or your family member is tired. So maybe there's something around the house that you could do just to help them out without them having to ask you, just because you love them and you care about them and you want to try to make their day better. That is a wonderful example of grace. So I really want you guys to think, who is at least one person in your life that could use a little grace and a little extra attention? So that is the last question I want to leave you guys with. And so like I said last week, some weeks we are going to be giving examples of how we can take what we're learning and put it into action, called compassion in action. So this week's compassion in action idea is this. So in addition to showing compassion to Mesavibeth by giving him land and food, David gives Mesavibeth the gift of encouragement. Mesavibeth could not walk, and many people didn't treat him well because he couldn't walk. But David instead sees Mesavibeth as someone special. He sees him as a child of God who deserved so much love and so much compassion. So I challenge you guys to do this. So compassion can also go along with encouragement. So when we are encouraging people, that's another way that we're showing them compassion and grace and just being good people and loving them well. So I have a challenge for you guys this week for your compassion in action. I think it would be really cool if at least once a day, you guys can do this for the next 7 days, at least once a day. I want you to give somebody in your life or somebody that you see a random compliment. I just want you to practice using your words to encourage people and for good things. So let's say your parent walks out of their room that morning and they're wearing an outfit that you think is so cool and you think they just look like the coolest family member in the world. Tell them that. Literally just say, Mom, Dad, Grandma, Grandpa, whoever it is, I love that shirt on you, or I think those are the prettiest earrings. Or maybe if you go to the store with your family, if you guys have to go pick up groceries, maybe you like the mask that your cashier's wearing. A lot of people are wearing fun, cute masks right now. You can literally just say, hey, I love your mask. I want you guys to practice really encouraging people this week with your words, because as we are learning throughout these lessons, our words have a lot of power. And I would love to think that you guys are using that power for something really positive and encouraging. So that is your challenge this week. At least one day, or at least one time each day, I just want you to give somebody around you a random compliment and make it a good compliment. Think about it a little bit. Be like, those are some wonderful shoes you're wearing. Or tell your sibling or classmate, you are a great colorer. Look at how you're staying in those lines. Any compliment is not too big or too small. Some kind of compliment. Let's just really get in a habit of encouraging the people around us every day. So the other thing I have for you that was given out in today's email that got sent out, the supplies and resource pages, was today's coloring sheet. It has King David on it. I think it looks really fun. So this is your King David coloring sheet, and it says, I will show you kindness, because King David did a really great job today of showing us a really cool example of kindness. So if you have, like I said, if you have a printer at home, please feel free to print this out and color it. If you do not have a printer at home, I want you to still draw King David, what you think a king looked like. So here we see this big jolly king in his crown, and he is seated at his royal table that he invited Mephibosheth to join him at. So maybe you could just draw what you think King David looked like, or what you think his royal table looked like when he had it set for his friend Mephibosheth. So that is this week's coloring page / activity. I am going to close us in prayer and then talk a little bit about what we're doing next week, because it's going to be a little different. So let's pray together. Dear God, thank you for giving us good things when we haven't earned them, and for teaching us about grace in the story of David and Mephibosheth. Keep our hearts soft with compassion and help us to show grace to others. Amen. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for joining me for another Sunday school episode. Now, next week, here's where things are going to get a little different. So we are actually going to be taking a pause in our compassion series, because the season of Lent is about to start. And we have some really cool lessons and a really cool series that I want us to do together during Lent. So we are going to get started in that in a couple weeks. But next Sunday, there technically will not be Sunday school, because I'm going to be giving the sermon in Big Church, and I would love it if you guys watch, because we're going to be doing something a little new, a little fun, a little creative, something that definitely, hopefully all ages will be able to follow along with and understand. And so I invite you guys to watch church as a family together next week, because like I said, we're going to be doing something a little new, and I think it's going to be fun and interesting. And I would love for you guys to do it all together and with me through Big Church. So next week there will not be an episode of Sunday School, and instead I invite you guys to watch my sermon and experience some intergenerational worship together. I think it's going to be really fun and really cool. So I hope to see you guys there next week. In the meantime, we will be back with Sunday School in just 2 weeks. We'll be starting our brand new Lent series. We are going to be talking about exploring all the areas of our heart, and I cannot wait to jump into doing that with you guys. It's going to be a lot of fun. So in the meantime, as always, I miss you guys so much. I love you so much. If I said anything this week that sparked some questions, or you're wondering about anything I talked about, just call or email me, ask for an adult's help, and we will make sure those questions get answered for you. In the meantime, make good choices, be good for your families because they need it, and I will see you guys back here for Sunday School in just a couple of weeks. Have a great week. I love y'all. Bye.